Weekend. How you doing? So how you guys liking the Urban Convention Center? It's a little bit more room to breathe, right? We need all the room that we can get. It got a little stuffy before. We'll miss the hotel, but you know. So everybody having a good weekend? You've seen a lot of cool costumes, yeah? And did you see that thing photo op? Did you see the little face back there? Goodness. All right. Well, my name is Paul Salfen. I'm here to moderate your panel, and this is so special because how many of you guys were at the Alamo Draft House the other night to see the screening? Yes. Yeah, see, that was really special to see it because John Carpenter was there, but now we get the cast here, which is really, really exciting. So we're going to show them just how we do it. We're going to bring out the cast of the thing. Let's hear it for Thomas Waits, Peter Maloney, Peter David. Come on! Keep it going. There's a lot of people here, and they're very excited because, God, we love this movie, don't we? And it still holds up so well. I mean, you know, when we saw it at the Alamo again the other night, we were reminded how great those special effects were, right? And pretty gruesome. So you know, you got to be excited because here we are, years and years later, talking about this film. It was still so much love, and probably even more. You probably get loved on more for this film now than you did when it came out, right? Yeah. Yeah. I'll take the love. Look at all this love for the thing.
It's all because of John.
Love you, kid.
Really, it's all because of John.
And we love having John here, and you know, of course, he's got his own stories about it. You guys have some great stories because this was not.
Now it's our turn.
Yeah. But this was not a normal set by any stretch of the imagination, right? This is a little bit tough, right? A little bit. I mean, just given the conditions, right?
I have no idea because it was my first movie, so I didn't know whether it was or it wasn't. But one thing I do remember. An outstanding memory is the first day of, you know, which you don't usually get. You don't usually get to rehearse a movie of any length of time. And we got 2 weeks. That's not just my memory, right? I mean, we got 2 weeks and we were rehearsing. And after the first day, because we're on the sound stage, and the ceilings were higher than these, and at lunchtime. Masur and there were 2 other guys, I don't remember who they were, but they were like, hey man, you know, you don't have to project that much.
I remember. I said, you can pull it back.
Right.
He was out there.
Yeah, well, it's all the learning curve out there. But I mean, where exactly was this film? Do you guys know?
Yes.
What was the question?
Where exactly was it filmed?
Where's it filmed? It was filmed at Universal Studios. Universal Studios in Universal City, California, and then we went up to the Salmon Glacier, north of Hyder, Alaska, which was north of Stewart, British Columbia, which is where we were staying.
Dreadfully cold. But also, like, you guys had just such a great camaraderie. I know, like, on the set too. You probably have so many great memories now, and you get to come back and hang out with each other and tell some of the stories. You a specific memory on set or something that was funny or that just stands out? It's like, I'm always going to remember this particular day.
I do, I have one.
Oh,
And of course he does. I know, I have a propensity for my loquacity.
Look at the head.
So Will Brimley, who's no longer with us unfortunately, was a great guy, and a great friend of mine for a lot of different reasons. But anyway, Will was auditioning for that film Tender Mercies. So we're all on the set, and there was one phone back then that rang, you know, and if they weren't shooting, you know, you could pick up the phone and answer.
We didn't have cell phones, guys.
Right. So Will had a meeting with who directed Tender Mercies. It was the Australian director.
The Australian guy.
Yeah.
Great director. Anyway, you know, Will was very tight with Duvall, and Will's sitting there and he's like, God damn, I gotta go meet this son of a bitch. And he goes in to the audition, and I'm sitting there, I'm waiting to find out what happens, you know. And he goes into the audition, and the director says, I'd like to hear you read for the part. And Will goes, I don't do that. And he goes, well, I'm not so sure you can play the part. And Will goes, I'm not so sure you can direct the goddamn movie. And he gets up and walks out. And Duvall starts calling on the phone, and I'm answering, the great Robert Duvall is calling on the phone. I'm like, oh, he's like, Wilford, please, get me Wilford Brimley. I'm like, Will, Bobby Duvall wants to talk to you. And then they're talking back. Anyway, they ended up doing the movie together, but I just thought it was so funny that he has a ball.
I remember it different.
Second Wilford Brimley story. Here's the second one.
It was the second part. He, as I remember it, he told me that, I think it was Deborah Winger who went in first. And he asked her to improvise, which she did not do well, and she didn't get the part. So when he went in, he says, look, I'd like to see you do an improvisation. He said, no, I don't do that. I'm not going to do that. So he said, will you read code for me? He says, no. I don't read well. I'll prepare something for you, but I'm not going to do that. So he said, well, how do I know that you can do a Texas accent? He said, how do I know that you would know a Texas accent if you heard it? That's not my
Our third Wilford Brimley story. We can talk about him because he's dead. You know? I'm sorry if that offended anybody. So we're all sitting around. It was one of the few times, you know, a lot of us were in scenes together, but there were a lot of scenes where just a few guys here and there. So at this one point, we're all sitting around on these director's chairs in a big kind of semicircle, sitting around shooting the shit, talking about the next scene that was coming up and all the relationships we have with each other and how we all interact and all the stuff we worked at in rehearsal. And Wilfred's sitting there and he's just shaking his head like this, quiet as can be, shaking his head. Then somebody, I don't remember whether it was Kurt or one of us, said, what's the matter? He says, you boys still think this movie's about us. It's not about us. It's about the rubber guy. And of course he was right. But we made the rubber guy work. Okay, because without us there wouldn't have been a movie.
How many of you guys were, show of hands, got to meet Wilford Brimley when he was here at Texas Frightmare? Yeah. That was great. I remember people walking around with the diabetes shirts. I said, do you mind? He goes, no. We could listen to Wilford Brimley stories all day, right? Well, do you have any other kind of cool, fun memories from the set? Then we're going to open it up to audience questions.
From the set?
Yeah.
I have a question for Richard Masur. After we hear from Joel Polis. Yeah, go ahead. Take that.
So it's my first time. It's my first movie also, and I'm on the set at Universal, and they're doing that scene where Dysart,
Stay on my.
the director, when Dysart at the dock is defibrillating Charlie Hallahan, and then his chest opens up and Dysart's arms go in, the chest bites his arms come off and everything. So Dysart defibrillates him and they shoot that and everything. And then this man comes in, I've never seen him before, but he looks just like Dysart. And so Dysart...
Wait, I'm going to interrupt you, and here's why, because we got to set this up. Oh, no, you got it.
So Dysart's arms go inside, and now they get this other guy to come in. He looks just like Richard Dysart. And so he's a double amputee. So that and they attach these arms to him. So when he pulls back, and after the mouth is closed on his arms, suddenly blood is squirting out of his elbows. There's no arms left. The guy looks so much like Dysart. I watched that, and I saw him pull back, and I thought, oh, this is Hollywood. They can get anything they want. This guy looked just like him. It was amazing. You can't tell the difference in this.
So this is what I was going to set the story up with. This man was in the makeup chair for about 4 hours. I don't know how Joel missed him. We all walked over to him. He was asleep that morning, but we all went over and we watched this guy get these prostheses put on his stumps, and we're all talking to each other, going, "This is the worst thing I've ever seen. How can they do this to this guy?" And I think it was Kurt or somebody walked up to him and said, "Are you okay?" And he said, "This is the greatest day I've ever had." We all thought, this is going to re-traumatize this guy. Because he wasn't born this way. He lost his arms in an industrial accident. You know, so it was like, really, but he was happy as a clam. And he looked nothing like Dysart. He had a false, like a mask, but a much better.
I didn't see the makeup job. Probably in Gladstone's at the beach.
It was his first movie. Dave, what was your question?
Thank you. Anyway, we haven't heard enough from Richard. So I want to add, I don't have a clue about directing, or I don't know, 50 millimeter lens from 150. I don't know what they're for. I don't understand lighting, framing, and any of that stuff. But Richard is a director. Richard has directed the film, and he understands lighting and lenses and all of the technical stuff. So he did something with John Carpenter, who isn't a bad director himself. Richard, John shot the scene after Norris blows up and falls apart and his head goes walking out of the room on Spider-Man. And John shot the scene and he was ready to move on. And then Richard said something to John, and I didn't quite catch it, but it was something like, well, I'll let you describe it. So John was ready to move to the next scene or the next setup, right?
Yeah, he had shot everything he needed for the scene, except for, the actual head walking, which was going to be done later in process. And he shot all of us standing there. We were all in the scene, in this little room, the same scene that Joel described after that happened. And Dave, as you may remember, had this kind of lovely line at the end of the scene. And so John shot the master of all of us looking, and then he shot some multi-shots of, 3 of us at a time and stuff, and he said, okay, that's it, we're out of this scene. And I said, John, you didn't shoot Clennon's close-up. And he says, what? I said, you didn't shoot David saying the line. He said, oh, no, I'm going to be on the head walking out on that line. I said, John, it's the funniest fucking line in the whole movie. And you're not going to shoot it close up? And he said, no, look, and he shows me the board, the board of the storyboard. He says, see, because you wanted to prove to me that that's what the shot was going to be. I said, John, if you don't shoot this shot, you're going to hate yourself forever. And he finally, to shut me up, he said, all right, and he shot David doing that. Anybody remember that shot?
Yes.
And what was the line, David? We're old men. We're old men.
Yeah, something about kidding.
You've got to be fucking kidding me, right? That's line. And John's not here to deny it, so I can keep telling the story.
Could pop out anywhere. All right, well, one thing we love about Frightmare is the most lovely fans and have the greatest questions. And so I'm going to turn it over to you guys. What do you guys want to know? Who's got a great first question? All right, right back there, sir.
Did they tell you beforehand who would end up being the thing, or did they leave that big because you weren't sure?
Did they tell you beforehand who was going to be the thing, or did they leave it ambiguous?
Is that a me question?
There was a lot of bullshit conversations about when did I become the thing? And if I'm the thing, do I know? We wasted most of the 2 weeks of the on these bullshit questions. Do you know whether how would you act if you weren't the thing? Like you were afraid you might be becoming the thing. And it was like a full semester at college of metaphysics.
I was the only one I knew. I knew I wasn't a thing, because it was in the script. So I knew for a fact I was never going to be the thing, because I was going to be dead on the fucking pool table. With a bullet in my head.
My question's actually directed towards Keith. So I grew up watching every single day, every single night, the Gargoyle series. And seeing absolutely amazing portrayal of Goliath, and just hearing the projection of your voice. And I probably should not have been raised on this, but Spawn as well. Yeah. But it was on HBO. It was a different time. But what I was wondering is what made you gravitate towards doing that particular type of voice work, and how did you feel about portraying Spawn again in Mortal Kombat 11?
This is a question that frequently fascinates me whenever I'm asked, because I'm an actor. And when I'm not working, I'm looking for work. Somebody offered me a job. So I took it. I mean, it really isn't any deeper than that. Now, it happens that I am an actor who loves language. And I've done a lot of Shakespeare. And when Gargoyles came around, Greg, who wrote it, was very inspired by Shakespeare, and so the language was elevated as to it. It was heightened language. So it was like right up my alley, and it was a great job. It was one of 3 times in my life that I can recall, just like it was yesterday, that I had an audition, and before I left the room, the producer said, "The job is yours. This is your job. If you want this, is your, you know." And I think just because of that, because my affinity for it, and it was just one of those things that was just like very synchronistic. I mean, I just jived with it, and they would, you know, I mean, in fact, when I auditioned on the, what do you call it?
Take your time, Keith.
I think I will. It was the, you know, the call, not the call sheet, but anyway, when they put the call out. Anyway, it said, "We're looking for a Sean Connery cop."
Oh, the breakdown.
The breakdown. So I went in trying to do my best Sean Connery, you know, and they said, you know, forget the Sean Connery thing. Just do it. And I did it, and but that was about as deep as it gets.
My question is, the thing was famously panned and by critics. What did you think it was going to be like? The critics were going to hate it, or do you think it was going to be loved when it first came out?
The critics didn't hate it. I mean, really, the thing that happened was they were making another movie on the lot the same time we were. It was called Cat People with Nastassky Hughes. And it was going to be their big release, their big hit movie, their kind of horror movie. And then what happened was they had a lot of trouble. They couldn't get the cats to do what they wanted them to do. And maybe they couldn't get Nastassky to do what they wanted her to do either. But they were way behind when their release date came up. So they took the thing which was supposed to be released later, but was ready, and they threw it in without any prep, no promotion ahead of time, and it just went off a cliff. It wasn't about critics. It was about there was no setup for the movie being released. So it wasn't until the picture ended up in VHS, but first on cable, that people started going, "Holy mackerel, have you seen this?" And word started spreading, and then that was the beginning of the traction that you created while you're all here now. Because the original release, not a whole lot of people saw, because it's just a terrible release by Universal.
Huh. All right. Yeah. I thought it was because, you know, Poltergeist came out, but E.T. had eclipsed everything because it was still it was still 3 months later, it was still
Alien.
an Aliens, yeah.
Oh, Aliens was later.
Okay, but E.T. opened a week before?
Yeah.
I know it was.
Does anybody out here know what the sequence of releases are?
I bet there's someone who does, yeah. What a great summer Richard Masur.
An Alien was
Thank
2
you
years
very
earlier.
much.
I think.
You have the alien, and then we have your alien. So.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Hi, good
Come
afternoon.
by for another picture.
I have a question. Does anybody have any memorable stories or snafus about what it was like to work with the dogs? That had to become rough.
Yeah, he does.
Do you want Joel to take that question?
Get Keith to do it.
Giving memorable.
I'll tell you memorable things about the dogs. They were beautiful. They were beautifully trained by a man named Clint Rowe. And I know this firsthand because I was bit by a dog when I was a boy delivering dry cleaning for my uncle. And I was petrified, scared. It stayed with me all my life. And I got this movie job, and I didn't realize until I got to California that I had to work with dogs in the very beginning of the movie. So I rehearsed with this dog for 2 weeks with Clint Rowe, the trainer. And so, because you know what happens with a dog. The dog gets shot, comes running towards me, jumps up on me, puts its forepaws on my shoulders. The dog is taller than me! And then he starts bumping my face like this.
bang, 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 bang. And who knows? I'm not supposed to know, nobody's supposed to know that he is infected, the dog's infecting me with the virus. This only comes later, comes out later. And so I worked with the dogs, and so I was able to do that scene without betraying the fact that I was scared to death. That was my experience with the dog. And then, well, that dog bothered me when I was trying to play poker in the rec room. And Clark, I don't know where Clark was. I mean, why wasn't he watching the damn dog? Put it back in the kennel where it belongs.
That's exactly right. Clark did not like the people, so he was never around the people except when he had to be. And I got called in here by you, I believe it was, who said, "Clark, will you get this goddamn dog out of here?" Right? But Jed, with all due respect, he wasn't the dog. He was Jed. Jed was half wolf, half Malamute, one of the most extraordinary animals I've ever been around. And during the rehearsal time that David described, when everybody was sitting around the table in this darkened soundstage, Clint came in one day, and I've been working with Jed for about 4 or 5 days at this point, because he wanted me very comfortable with Jed. Jed, because he was half wolf, was very, very tightly wound, and he hadn't done a movie before. So Clint was he didn't know how he was going to react to a lot of people. And he was a great trainer, as Peter said. And he trained entirely with positive reinforcement and a tiny bit of emotional pressure, which is to say when Jed did something wrong, you just look at him and you go, Jed? And the dog, this big dog would just go, what? Shrink up into a little ball. So, but it was beautiful to watch. So one day when we were rehearsing, Clint came into the soundstage and sat by the wall with Jed while we were rehearsing. And then there was a sequence I wasn't any part of, which was a lot of the movie. So I got up. I don't mind. I got up and I walked over. I sat down next to Jed and Clint, and we're sitting there in the dark. And I said, "What's going on?" He said, "I want to introduce Jed to the rest of the cast. And because you know them, I'm going to use you as, I don't know if you guys remember this, but I'm going to use you as the bridge to introduce Jed to the rest of them." So there was a room that off to the side of the sound stage, and we went into that room, and I would go out one at a time and bring each of the guys in. They would sit down on the bench next to me, and Clint had me talk to the guys so Jed could see I was comfortable with them. And then he would have Jed come over and start doing things that Clint would ask him to do while the guy was sitting there. And then at the very end, he gave each of the guys a treat as they came in one at a time. And he would say, "Okay, give him the treat now." And they'd give Jed the treat. And even Peter Maloney, bless his heart, who was shaking like a leaf during this entire introductory period, even he treated the dog. The only one who didn't treat the dog was Charlie, he should rest in peace, Hallahan, who was so scared that he threw the treat across the room. So Peter, you were not the most frightened person. But the one person in the whole group that Jed wouldn't work in front of was Kurt Russell. He was totally freaked out by Kurt. I don't know whether it was his alpha male person. I don't know what it was, but it was so weird. But he worked fine around Kurt when we did the film. But I don't know that Kurt was actually in any scenes. But, oh no, maybe it was Kurt who told me to come and get the dog.
I only have one dog story. This is how I remember it. The ASACP came to investigate because that mechanical dog was so real. They thought they came to see if we were being cruel to animals. And when that morning was the first time I'd seen the dog, and I walked in to the soundstage and it was sitting right at the corner of the door, and I just went, "Whoa!" It looked so real. I didn't know it wasn't. I jumped and it didn't jump, and I'm like,
Next question.
Hi, everyone. I actually, Keith, I worked with you once back in, during a convention in Atlanta. I used to be your guest handler way back when. But this is a question I wanted to ask you at the time and not get a chance to ask all of you. With it being such a tense movie, was there ever a really tense atmosphere in the movie as far as when it got to those parts in the film? Like, was there a tension in, backstage or off the set, or you guys kind of, very, playful with each other, we cut pranks on each other or anything like that?
Yeah. Try to make it short. You remember when we were all nailing 2x4s into the floor to keep the doors from opening to the thing? And the way we were told to nail the 2x4s into the floor, never would have worked. And I was hammering nails into the 2x4 and on into the floor with Mr. Waits.
Yeah.
And at one point, I mean, if you think about it, it would never have worked. For a little bit of pressure on the door, those 2x4s would have gone skittering across the floor, the nails useless. There was a better way to do it. But I said to you, this is bullshit. This is bullshit. This isn't going to work. This is silly. Everybody's going to see this and they're going to know this is bullshit. And I had I had a pin on microphone, and Tom probably had one too. And believe it or not, this is between shots. John Carpenter had earbuds, and he heard what I said, and he came running across the studio soundstage saying, "It is not bullshit, David! It is not bullshit!" So, to answer your question, if I got it right, there was some tension.
Do any of you have any recollections when you had the set on the fire on the set? Were any there when the whole thing just went up the poof?
Yeah, but I don't want to tell about it. One of the other guys.
You asked about the fire extinguishing? Is that what you're talking about?
No, when the set caught on fire.
When the outpost blew up.
No, you're not talking about when on Rob's model on there. He was using all those adhesives or anything, and you look a fire bar there evidently. And I read that thing caught on fire. So the whole thing went up on stage, and you actually had to go through and rebuild everything. It wasn't the set, it was the actual model caught on fire.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I recall, and they were getting ready to blow it, and John was very tense, and everybody was very tense, and I, being a solipsistic New York actor, went up to him and said, "Listen, my motivation in that scene that we're going to be doing," and he looked at me like, "I got a few other things on my mind." And then it blew up, and I figured out I better keep my mouth shut.
Hello.
Sorry. My dad is going to be so jealous of me. And he is an actual child of the 80s, and I am not. I'm about half as old as this movie. So I was wondering, in your words, what makes this film so timeless? Or what makes it such a classic that stands the test?
I'm more interested in hearing what you have to say about that. Because you're just going to get bullshit from all of us. It's more important, because you watched the film, it's more important for us to know what connects that experience, what connection you have with that experience. You mind talking about it?
I have so many great memories of my dad showing me the film when I was so young and explaining to me about...
How young were you?
I don't remember off the top of my head, but I remember it was the
Were you
first...
older than 12?
Maybe. I don't
You go to
remember.
prison.
I just remember him using it as an example to explain to me how beautiful the art of practical effects and of creating scares were, and how beautifully that came together with all of the interactions that you all had as a cast and the tension in that film. Like, it just all came together so beautifully. So I guess, did you realize as you were creating it, or do you have any memories of looking around and seeing like the beautiful work of the effects and like the story and realizing like this is really cool?
Well, it was really cool to have that job.
It was really cool when we were doing it. It really was. I mean, despite all the the nonsense we thought, it was an extraordinary group of actors who were really trying to do something well. And the fact that John didn't care about that meant nothing to us. we were really trying to do something. And the work that Bravo team did, when you can't imagine, underneath all the slime and blood and nonsense was some of the most exquisitely beautiful, grotesque sculpture you've ever seen in your life, made out of resin. I don't know, when you guys went to get how many people went to the lab, to his shop to get, face molds or some other kind? I know you did, David. Anybody else? Peter,
I did.
Yeah. Anyway, but I had to do it just for the blood hit. I had to get a full head thing done for the blood hit. And while I was there, I walked past this thing just lying on the floor, which was this amazing sculpture just lying on the floor. And what it was is, it was the thing that they brought back from the Norwegian camp with everything being pulled apart, and that Blair is examining when we're standing in there in the room. And underneath all that crap was this unbelievably beautiful piece of sculpture. And that's what Rob Bottin's work was. It was constant, beautiful sculpture. And unbelievable genius creativity, right? Am I right? So we knew that. We knew that this was something no one had ever seen, and we didn't know how it was all going to fit together. Only John knew that. And I second what Thomas said when he said it was all John, because John had a vision for this, which I frankly, when we went up to Alaska and they told me that we were reshooting a whole lot of stuff that we had shot indoors on set that worked beautifully because it was so tense, and it was moving it outside. I said, okay, that's the movie. It's gone. It's totally screwed up, because this is a movie about guys who cannot go outside or they're going to die, and he's having us have conversations standing out there saying, I know I'm human. Get out of here. It's 80 below zero. What am I going to stand there? He was right, because all of you guys made him right. Now, I think our movie originally might have even been better, but he was still right.
I love it. Thank you. All right. So we only have time for a couple more questions, but maybe we could do like a speed dating version of this, like quick questions, quick answers. We'll just get through as many as we can.
You guys are probably like my favorite ensemble cast in a movie. Your characters feel very defined. They feel like they have their place, and it feels like you guys have known each other for a while. I just want to know where that camaraderie came from. Was it in your character's script? Did it come from rehearsal? Did John have a part of that?
found that the rehearsal period, we worked for 2 weeks together, really kind of set the tone because 9 of the 12 of us were theater actors, and we were already working on creating the relationships and everything. Although John, when the film was done, said, "I'll never rehearse actors again."
But then he totally changed his mind. He did. He publicly changed his mind and said he was very grateful for it.
Whatever happens, the ensemble was pretty extraordinary, and because not only shooting at Universal, but when we went up to Alaska, I'm an outdoors person, and it was just thrilling to me to be there and to be in the scope, just the majesty of Alaska and that glacier. And it was cold. It got colder after we left, but there were a couple of nights it was down 30 below. But you're working on a time schedule. You got to get stuff done, and you're all pulling for the same goal and devoting your commitment and your skills and your imagination and your improvisation together. It really became like a theater group that had been working for months doing a play night after night after night. And I've found over the last 40 years, since we started doing these things, that the relationships have grown as we have changed and gotten older and hopefully wiser and mellowed. And I look forward so much to seeing these guys every time we get together for these things, because relationships get richer and as our lives have changed and we have more experience. So it really, it was, I agree with you, a great ensemble for a film.
My question is sort of what they covered, just Rob's great work in the film and everyone's reaction to it. My backup is for Keith, which was more physically demanding? Were you shooting up in Alaska or the fight scene from They Live?
Apples and oranges. I mean, they had their different, respective challenges. It was, because it's certainly because it was Joel and I's first movie, so we had great moments of bonding when we would be, we'd come in the morning and say, "Listen, go have lunch, and don't come back. Call us back, and we'll see if we get to you." And that was like, it was, I knew that wasn't going to last, but it was great while it did. And again, that was my first movie. My contract was for 20 weeks. In the last 40 years, I can count on the fingers of one hand how many 20-week contracts I've had. Most of it, are over, way before that. So that was another thing that lended itself to great bonding, because we could have dinner together, we could go out, we could hang out, because, many of us were from New York and didn't live in California, so we'd have to, I didn't really know anybody out there, so it was like us wanting to do stuff. So, and
Keith didn't know how to drive when he got here.
Oh, right. And I didn't know how to drive, and in the middle, right before, the day before we started shooting, I had a really fucked up back, excuse myself. Accident, and I broke two bones in my hand. And I tried to fight it, but my hand had swollen like a boxing glove. And John and Franco were walking toward me, and I had my hand behind my back, and as I let it slide to my side, I watched the two of their faces go You know, what? And by the time they got up to me, it's like, what the fuck happened here? What the fuck? And they rushed me to the hospital and had operation immediately. And if you, the next time you deign to watch this movie, you will notice that you never see my left hand. Until toward the end of the movie when I have to break down the door with the hatchet. That's the first time you ever see my hand, my left hand.
I'm giving the wrap up thing, so I'll do one last quick question here.
Okay, I guess my only question would be, following up on the prior question of the ensemble, you guys are great. I think that's what makes the movie timeless, is that your characters are all very strong individual characters, but as an ensemble, you guys work really well together. Do all of you know what your roles were on the Arctic base? Like, we clearly knew there was a radio operator, there was a helicopter pilot, but was Childs just a badass? I mean, like, what was your role on this? Like, because everybody has to have a very specific role, because it has to be a small team. Did everybody know what they were?
Yes. Yes, we did. I mean, that was sort of one of the benefits of rehearsing for 2 weeks, because you could figure that out. Because then, you're right.
Except for TK, who never knew what he was doing.
All right, well, guess what? We have a special presentation really quick. So everybody stay right here. We have really, really cool, what would you call them, trophies? Right? Trophies, awards. We have awards. So I'm gonna let this gentleman come and explain what exactly this is. But when you see these, you're gonna want one. I want one. Look at these, they light up too.
Oh my God.
Yeah. You want to explain a little bit about this?
Every year, the Boy Fair gets hold of me and asks me to do a Lifetime Achievement Award for the big panel. And this year, I was absolutely delighted. It was my favorite movie of all time, The Thing. So what we do is we do like a little special thing for the cast as our way of saying thank you. So on behalf of Texas Frightmare Weekend and my company Nightmares Unlimited, we want to thank you guys for all the years of scares, laughs, and greatness.
So before we go, we're gonna all turn around here and take a selfie with you guys. And then we're gonna post that up so you guys can tag yourselves in it. So if you guys can stand up and squeeze in, let's make this the most epic group picture. Ready? And then we're gonna give them a big smile. You guys ready?